All right, guys, welcome back. Oh my God, to episode 74 of the Light Warriors Unleashed podcast. And this is going to be a treat for you. And I say that with so much juiciness inside of the space of. So, Alara and I, oh my gosh, hopefully you guys can get used to the word pussy. And if not, you're going to get used to it in this podcast because we dive in to the feminine energy, the womb work. We talk about sexual experiences. We talk about orgasms. This is definitely an explicit podcast, but so necessary in the mechanism of what we're moving through, especially as women. And if you are a male or a man listening to this podcast, this is going to give you so much more information to the dynamics of women and what we hold and the calibration of the woman's portal way that I call it, the powerful portal. And holding this space of dynamic within us and what is here and how to expose it. And Alara's been doing this kind of work for a long time. She is a healer. She channels quantumly. Like, we've had numerous high-level spiritual conversations over the last year together. And, you know, I was blessed to be able to be on her actual TV show that she had at the time and, you know, step into this space with her. But she's a beautiful, beautiful soul. And trust me, guys, she says it like it is in the most eloquent, connected way too, where when you have never said pussy so many times in an hour, you're going to hear it that many times and become purposefully aligned in the space of owning it, because pussy is just a word that we've put out into the mechanism to create a distortion around the actual connection a woman has to her ovaries, to her clitoris, to her vaginal tract, to all of the juiciness of a woman. So this is powerful, powerful stuff. And I am just so excited and so stoked to hold this space for you today and to discover alongside of you. So with no further ado, enjoy episode 74, Light Warriors Unleashed podcast. I don't even know how to even preface this for anybody that's about to jump into this conversation because they have no idea what's about to happen to them, I don't think. But all the power to us, like that's what I want to say. Oh, I am just so grateful to be expanding in this energy with you, to have the conversation in a very divine, light world mechanism, real talk even, about feminine energy and about portal ways and about this juiciness that us as women get to have and hold. And I think how I want to lead off this conversation today is about ecstatic women. And I want to know what this actually means. And I want to know what it means for you, how it's playing out in the field of the collective, like your mission with it on Earth, and whatever else you want to dive into in connection with that. I'm going right
there. Yum, yum, yum. Yeah. Thank you so much. I just want to say I'm so honored to be here with you. And I'm really joyous to have this conversation with you and dive into the juiciness of it. And yeah, what a fantastic question. So to me, the ecstatic self is who we truly are.
Love it.
And to me, it in its fullness, honestly, it's pure ecstasy. And I've experienced this first off when I had my spontaneous Kundalini awakening that I call going from numb to ecstatic, because I was numb, I was shut down. At that time in my life, orgasm wasn't even very easy for me, like sexual orgasm. I had to really concentrate and everything had to be just so. And I had really no aliveness in my life. Even the things that I really enjoyed kind of had this dullness to them.
Yeah.
And one day I was just driving down the road and I was going to work on horses, because at the time I worked on horses. And my higher self said, Om 3 times. At the time I was meditating. I knew what oming was. It was not what I did. I didn't practice it, but I knew what it was. So I was like, okay, higher self. Deep breaths. I gave it my all. And at the end of the third Om, an energy shot through my body, out my crown, and I went into full body orgasm. Had never experienced such a thing. I pulled the car over and was just in this like, oh, wow, oh my God. My whole body was just vibrating. And I had no idea what had happened to me. At the time, I had no idea what Kundalini Shakti was. Yeah. And after I kind of calmed down a little bit, wow, I found myself in an ecstatic state. And I was there for the rest of the day. I had to go to these horses. And when it happened to me, the orgasm, I was on a back road, but then I was on the freeway and I was, it was like one of those experiences where you're like, I couldn't even sit in my seat. I was like dancing. I had the music blaring. My foot was like just barely on the pedal. I'm like waving to everybody going by me. I was just like, oh my God, life is so beautiful.
I love it.
And that was really my first taste of it, and that was my awakening process. Yeah. And after that, I actually had kind of a quite tumultuous 5 months, as basically the Shakti had opened me up, and all of my suppressed emotions and a lot of my suppressed trauma came roaring to the surface. I still had no idea what was going on. But my higher self just said, stay with it, just work with it. And then at the very end, as I was coming back into a harmonious state, this book came into my lap called Kundalini Awakening. And the first chapter basically spelled out exactly what happened to me. Now, from that point, it still wasn't like, oh, okay, now I'm an ecstatic being. I still had a lot of work to do.
Yeah. Here's the piece,
I just wish it was like that, right?
The work, Yeah.
And so I continued through the process, and what kept happening is I kept hitting these ecstatic states. And it's really the beautiful thing about the ecstatic state is it's an embodied state.
Right. Yeah.
Because I've also experienced going into meditation and being very up and out of my body and being in bliss.
Yes.
But ecstasy involves the body and very much the pussy. And it's one of the most profound experiences of sensation and pleasure that we can have in our bodies. And through my work, my higher self has really taught me that this is what's capable for us. And now I experience that state every single day. But also one of the most profound things on top of all that has happened is the Great Mother has jumped into my space. And one day she was like, I want to show you. She says, I'm in a constant state of ecstasy. And, she's, just in this pure creative energy, right?
Yeah.
And she showed me, like a grain of sand worth. I don't even know, tiny, tiny, tiny portion. And my body almost couldn't handle it. She gave me just enough where I was like breathing, like, oh my God, that is so much ecstasy. And every so often she comes in and she reminds me of that. And just as I say that right now, my body goes into it. It's just like the truth of that's who we ultimately are. And from my understanding, from my teachings of my higher self, that's really sixth density consciousness.
Got it. Yeah. And it's amazing to feel this. And I know these conversations are coming into our awareness more and more. We're remembering these parts that have always been us, but the earth density experience has created us to kind of minimize this and almost shame. I think I want to go there first before we kind of open up really that palette. It's like a lot of us have been conditioned, especially as women, to not speak about ecstasy, desire, pleasure in our bodies. Most of us didn't grow up with mothers that were like, your womb is a portal way and you can create through it. Like my mom never, even to this day, has said that to me, and I'm just like, I understand this at a certain level, but this is embodied for you. This is like what you teach. So we're watching women awaken to this and understanding it a bit more. And you obviously had a dynamic, movement through your body and the Kundalini activation and how you brought that in. And we're like, whoa, never felt this before. But there was obviously a process that you had to go through too, of like, did you ever go through the shame of being able to hold it? Like saying pussy without even flinching, because we've been conditioned to, that's not okay to say in public. Tell me about that experience for you. And maybe you didn't have to go through that part to get to where you are, but I feel like there probably was something there. Yeah.
A shit ton of shame. Yeah. Shame in every direction. Obviously I had been sexually abused by my grandfather and had actually several sexual abusers when I was a child. So there was that shame. And then, partially because of the sexual abuse and partially because I realized much later, I'm a highly, highly sensitive individual sexually as well. And I need very little to get off.
Yeah.
And all of the men in my life came at me very hard. And even their gentleness, which was fairly gentle, was hard to my body.
Right.
To the point that like none of it felt good. And I really created a lot of numbness in my pussy. And so for a long time, orgasm was just not available to me for most of my life.
Right.
And then even again, like I said, when it was challenging. And there was a lot of like, what is wrong with me? And shame around that. So I wouldn't have conversations with my friends about orgasms and about sex and all of that because I was like, I don't even know how to talk about it. I don't really experience it like they do, And then in the process of being guided by my higher self to deepen into these parts of my body, I found ancestral shame. And one time in particular, I was really just working in this deep shame of my ancestors and of parallel realities of mine of being a sex slave. And the distortion there of being a sex slave and enjoying it, but having it tied up with, my nourishment and all the twistedness that goes on along with something like that. And I was working just day after day in my cervix, and I hadn't been speaking to my parents for a while. It just hadn't happened. We don't like talk all the time. And I'm in it, working on it. And my mom calls me and she's like, I need to tell you something. And I was like, yeah. And she's like, I've been diagnosed with cervical cancer.
Oh my gosh.
And I didn't even know she was sick because it came on so strong. And so they hadn't told me that she wasn't feeling well. I knew nothing. And I was like, oh, well, I know exactly why you have cervical cancer. I'm working on it right now.
Yes. I totally believe in all this. This is the thing that's happening right now in the collective. Amazing. Yep.
Yeah. So definitely the shame. And as you said, like our moms don't talk to us about these things. And, just for women in general, what I think one of the biggest things is we don't see ourselves as beautiful. I never saw my pussy as beautiful. And, even looking at her was just like, okay, I don't know. It's kind of weird. Look at it. I don't know what to say about her. She looks odd.
Like, you date some guys sometimes and they're like, send me a photo of it. You're like, no, you
want to see that?
Not work well on photography. Okay. Like this is you come and see me kind of endeavor, so true. But us getting used to but that is that's like one of the most potent parts of us. Like we've got like as women for manifestation and creation and rebirthing and alignment, like we literally bring a soul into the earth through our pussy, and we think it's just, oh, well, that's just a thing that women do. Let's tap into that a little bit because there's something there. I'd love for your take on it because I know I already feel like I just unleash it on us. Tell us about the power portal.
Yes. I mean, well, there's so much, right? Because pussy is kind of implying all of it. Pussy is about, kind of the fullness of our womanhood. Is really what it's referring to. And I'm using that word intentionally because it's challenging for women. And it's about like reclaiming this for ourselves. And so there's several pieces to it. Of course, our womb is obvious. Yeah, it's a portal, right? Between the non-living, the ethereal, and the physical. And I mean, shouldn't that be enough? Like, I don't even, just like,
period.
Honestly, it's incredible. And when you work in your womb, we as women particularly, of course, all of us are, but women in particular are very powerful, multidimensional beings. And in our womb, there literally is, it's a black hole. And a black hole, one side of it is consumption, destruction, and the other side of it is birth. And that exists in our womb. And so the same, tunnel, so to speak, portal that we come through from spirit into fetus is the same exact portal that we leave. We don't actually go back into the womb and go out that way, but we actually go through the same exact tunnel. So when near-death experience people describe the light at the end of the tunnel, they're describing that portal through the womb. This has a lot of symbolism. Basically what it means is, as women, we have the power of both destruction and creation. And I could go in a whole episode just about this concept, because we are very, very powerful. For those women who are listening, they've ever heard of Kali, right? The goddess of destruction of time and death. Basically, we have the power to consume large quantities of energy and literally transform them into light. And I do this all the time. The first few times I didn't understand what was happening, but it's a very powerful aspect of our womb. And it's one of the reasons that women have so many difficulties around menstruation and menopause and all of these experiences with our womb, is because if they don't understand how to use their womb to transmute energies, those energies literally just sit in your womb and can become toxic.
Thank you for connecting a dot for me, because I literally was just with an energy practitioner. I don't even know if she'll call herself that, but it doesn't even matter. She's working on my body to release some energy, and I'm very armored in my energetic field. And she's like, why are you so guarded? And I'm like, how much time do we have? And I'm like, but I recognize, and we went through all the she's like, what else do I need to know? And I'm very regular in my menstrual moon time cycle, 28 days. One day, really, the day is the day. And if I just listen to my body that day, I don't have to wear anything. I don't have to monitor it. I just go to the bathroom when I go and everything is fine. I don't need anything else. But that is not usually consistent in a woman's world. They're really heavy, or they have cramps, or I don't have any of that. So literally a couple of weeks ago, I said to a friend of mine, I said, well, I'm not going to have all the symptoms, the menopausal stuff that most women have. And she's like, oh yeah, you wait till you get there. I'm like, no, I'm just actually making a choice consciously now to allow my body to move it through super easily with grace. And at the time, I just felt that was truth. But now that you mentioned this, I went, oh, it's because I've done a lot of and I know I've got more work to do there, because there's another phase moving in my world. And I know that I've got some stuff to maneuver through that and understand its power and its real potential in my body as not just physical, but an energetic being. But I'm like, oh, that's why I'm not going to have any menopausal stuff, because the energy is going to be flowed and it's going to allow me to move into the next phase of that evolution. So thank you for giving me that.
Yeah. Yes. And menopause is really like a reclamation of our power too, because of we don't have to spend the energy in that destruction of our lining. So more power is retained. It's a very, very I'm really looking forward to it. I'm like, is it here yet? I'm ready. Let's go. Bring it.
Is it the only one yet?
Is it here yet?
You're not the normal typical person that would be like, no, you're definitely.
What are you talking about?
Yeah. And you know what's so funny? Whenever we get together, all the systems drop off in my world, apparently. I'm like, what is up with this? And I'm like, every time we do something, it's like, I just disappear. My mic's not working. Nothing wants to work. Okay, whatever. We'll just keep talking. It'll be fine.
Delicious. It will be fine. Yes, luckily.
So funny. So we're like, what are you seeing right now? So your movement in the world right now is having women really, well, and one of the many, I'm sure, but having women really understand the potential here in their bodies and with this energy. Is that correct? Is that something that I'm saying right?
Yeah, absolutely. To really understand it and embody it, and reclaim it and awaken as well that Shakti, that energy that I connected to with ecstatic, that Kundalini experience, Kundalini Shakti, because that's one of my gifts, is the ability to activate women in their Shakti and to help them facilitate that energy. And it's so imperative, because it is our aliveness and it is our liberation. Right. And, when Shakti moves all the way up the body and out the crown, it's divine union. And it's, the core belief in humanity is the belief of separation. And we all seek that union.
So I hope, and this is why I say this word on purpose, but I hope that by the time I'm at the end of this life, that I can actually understand full embodiment and wholeness, in all the parts. Because I really feel like consciously I understand it, but bringing it into the body and being it all the time, every day, without having to think about it, is the quest, I really feel. Shakti represents that energy in all of her forms, and in the spaces of, if I even look at the goddess form and how her like twin flame actually is her, which is like in essence like something else to decipher, and obviously we're all one and the all energy is the same. We can go up to that point, but in representation of the duality within us, it's like that wholeness and that oneness. And really stepping into that, like I really feel, I'm like, okay, maybe then I don't have to come back. Like if I can get to that point, like maybe I don't have to come back. Like, and then right now I'm getting told, look, and I'm like, okay, we'll have a conversation later. Like, and I'm like, but I'm like, yeah, okay, I get you. I'm like, just hoping, like I'm just putting it out there into the world, hoping. But I feel like that unity, yeah, we can talk about the feminine divinity, but I feel like there's also the blend of the beautiful masculine within the womb structure as well. Is that true? Like I don't work within the womb like you do, so I'd love to just hear your opinion on that.
What do you mean by that? Is there the masculine
Yeah, so
structure?
like from what I've understood through some of my other teachers through like our chakra system, there's like a twin flame in every single part of our chakras, including masculine and feminine divine like energies in all of our chakra systems. So I'm curious to find out, like obviously the womb is a part of our physical form, but in the energy of the womb, does it hold both? Like is that like, maybe you never even thought about this before and we're like uncovering something and having a discussion about it, but do you find that it's just strictly feminine energy that's held there, or is there a duality there? And what would that duality look like within both forms, if there was?
Yeah, I mean, I haven't actually ever thought about this, but in absolutely, there's duality in all of our form, right? And
Yeah.
one of the ways there is direct duality, so to speak, in the womanhood is in the ovaries specifically, because they are
Mm.
one's on the left and one's on the right, and so they do hold very strongly that dual expression. And
Yeah.
so each, the womb, the ovaries, the cervix, the G spot, the clitoris, the labialips, they all hold this very strong symbolism and
Mm.
wisdom. One of the things I do is I take women through what I call the 8 gates of the womb, is activating each of those processes. But
Nice.
specifically to the womb and the masculine, we're not one without the other.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And to me, the masculine is the structure and the womb itself
Right.
is structure, right? Like the
Yeah.
actual womb is a physical structure.
No, it's cool. Like this has been showing up a lot, and I'm actually in a curiosity state asking you these questions.
Mhm.
Like just this like naive little girl over here, like in sex ed, almost going, okay, what else do I want to know about this? Because this isn't something that I've considered deeply like you. Yeah, go for it. What do you got? What's the hit?
Well, and then the other thing that I'm reminded of right now is, this isn't in, I don't want to push out other sexual experiences, but there is something to be said about the experience of the pussy and the cock, right?
Right.
Because when the cock actually enters all the way in and touches the head to the cervix, it completes the tree of life, sacred geometry. So yeah, I just got total like, I just got lit.
And let's go there. I'm like, oh my God, I
It
never
was
thought
just
about it
like,
this way before. Yeah, I know. I'm like,
and so it is that coming together, it is that
yeah.
union. And to me, where duality exists, where duality meets itself, God is revealed. So I love having conversations of duality because it's the basis of our experience.
Well, and I say a lot of time, like we and based on some of the talks that we've had in the past, like if we even go to the Kybalion, like polarity is a principle on Earth, and the gender is a principle on Earth, and not just in like in the masculine and feminine embodiments of the energies, right inside of that space. So having these conversations open up the palette of the wholeness of it all, and that representation of that is just like wow, the visual, like just imagining. And even where the like pubic hair is placed, it's almost like it's the grass like around the actual tree.
I love that.
It's almost like if you took a shot of it all, like it all would come together in this beautiful landscape of imagery. Interesting, so interesting. Yeah, go for it.
Yeah. And, so for women, we have, several different ways that we can orgasm. And there's the clitoris orgasm, the G spot orgasm, and the cervical orgasm. And, when a man is penetrating, and again, the tip of him is hitting that cervix, when the woman is feeling safe and she's open, that's where the cervix is a wormhole. I mean, it's just incredible. It's a wormhole. That's the only word that I can think of that represents what I experienced with it, straight to the heart.
Interesting.
And there's this beautiful, just direct, like almost as if they are simultaneously holding the same space together. And it's so powerful. And so when the man is penetrating and really hitting that cervix, and again, she feels safe, she feels open, she feels received and honored, that's that multidimensional orgasm that is really coming from the energy of the heart. So even though it's very, much in the cervix and in the pussy, the heart is the one that just starts to explode with energy. And that is so tremendously healing. I've laughed so many times just thinking about the energy that we have just cast across our neighborhood.
Something's happening somewhere. It's like the beam of light comes out of the house, it turns green, and the whole entire community goes into like, a vibrational energy. I'm obviously being facetious, but like that could happen. Like for those that see energy, that might be a thing. Like they actually might see the house all of a sudden expand with all this energy around it and be like, what's going on in that house? Oh, just cervical orgasms. That's all. Like
Yeah. It
so
definitely feels, I mean, it is really, really potent and powerful to the point that oftentimes we'll go into trance right after, deep healing trances, like the energy just course through our body. And it's not we don't pass out or anything. Our bodies are just like, whoa, just stop moving. We need to process all of this energy that you just lit us up in.
oh my gosh. And I say this with so much like vulnerability too. Like I've never been with a partner who I would even feel like I have been in my twin flame relationship in this life. So exciting. Two unhealed people trying to be in a relationship when like the main vibration of the twin flames is like heal your shit and then you come together. Yeah, we refused to kind of step into the space of healing. So we were always in a space of he would have been the closest person that I would have actually been vulnerable enough, but I was still wearing so many masks trying to pretend to be something that I wasn't, that I wouldn't even know how to be safe in who I was. So I have never personally yet experienced this. However, my man that's coming in soon, I assume that will be a thing for us. Yeah, like I'm calling him in to be able to hold, because that's what the real, like what I actually desire in the masculine energy is to hold a safe space enough for me to be able to be, like you just said numerous times, she feels safe enough to be here in the space of. So I look forward to that. And if there's ever a time where I'm like, I think I need help here, I know where I'm going. Like, like I'm like, and I desire to be able to connect deeper into this. I call it the portal of power, obviously, the portal of power named my pussy, to be able to like really understand. Cause like I also grew up in a family where my mom and dad weren't really affectionate around each other. Any talk of sex, it was like, close your ears or like, block your ears, close your eyes. Like we never had this discussion about it. So it was always a hidden thing. So yeah,
Yeah, it's pretty incredible how our society does that. And, I loved how you spoke about armor because it's one of the words I use a lot. And it's definitely something I also had a lot of de-armoring to do. And when I met my partner now, he's my twin flame. He was not awake. We had quite the process, quite the journey. But he was the one that was able to hold the space while I unraveled the just energy in my pussy. And kind of going off what we were talking about earlier about looking at her, right? I had this sexual magic book, and when we first met, I'd had the book already for a couple of years, and I just knew like, oh, this book was meant for him and I. And the first part of it was talking about, oh, just have your man gaze at your pussy and just adoration and love. And I was just like, before I'd met him, I was like, who's going to do that? Like, I don't even do that. Why would he do that? Like what kind of guy? And do I want to be with the kind of guy that would do that? I'm not quite sure. I don't know what to think about this. And funny enough, like very shortly after we had met, my man did it. I had never mentioned, he didn't even know about the book. I'd never mentioned it to him. One day he just did it. And I was like, oh my God,
You're
you
the
are
guy.
doing it. Yeah, you're just, and he was just like, why wouldn't I? And I was like, wow. And so
Amazing.
he's been able to hold that space of really honor and reverence and
Yes.
allow me to,
Mhm.
like a fish out of water,
Yeah.
flap all over the place. And we've had some really intense experiences where he's used his fingers, because fingers used to be a real challenge for me because that's how I was sexually abused. And
Right.
he'd use his fingers and then I would just scream and rage and hit the bed and go through process, and he would hold that space for me. And
Mm.
then it happened during sex. I mean, we've gone through so much healing of my trauma
Yeah.
in that space with him. That's been just so potent and powerful and absolutely beautiful.
That's, yeah. Thank you for sharing that, and amazing. And I just keep getting the hit, like, you wouldn't be able to help other women go through it unless you went through this yourself, right? And it's all part of the whole mechanism of it all. And but to like, and sometimes you're like, do I really need to go through this? Yeah, because someone else is coming into your world that you're going to be able to help serve, that maybe their guy doesn't know how to hold the space for them like yours does,
Yes.
and they have to teach them how to be that so that they can expand. And yeah, what a beautiful, beautiful energy. That was so, yeah, amazing.
Yeah, and I did have to teach my guy because he didn't know how to do it,
Yeah.
but he just was able to do it when I
Yeah.
taught him how to do it. So that's a
Love.
lot what I do with women is help them teach their man, or help their man at least understand and be able, because they don't always have to know exactly what's going on. They just have to be the willingness to, like, okay, I trust that
Yeah.
you're really honestly okay, and that this isn't about me, because that's the first thing that happens
Right.
is of course it's in
Yeah.
a sexual, it's very intimate, it's very vulnerable. And the first thing would be like, what am I doing wrong? Why am I hurting you? And
Yeah.
so, yeah, I help women who have partners, help their partners to understand, okay, this is how you can help me. And this is how we go through this process together.
And it's just, I love that you brought this up. So I was like, oh, I want to go here next. Okay, this is great. So partnership makes sense, right? And then you have two equals coming together in the space of like this experience. And I'm sure the women coming into your world aren't like going, well, maybe I'll tell my partner next week that I'm doing, like it's an involved process, most likely that this is moving through in some way, shape, or form. But for the single girls, out there doing this work, I don't know. I'm just going to put it out there like this. Like, what does that look like in the space of this? Because obviously we're doing our own healing inside of our bodies and connection, but calling in a guy that can hold it, or like, I don't know, like there's something that you're going to say that will just tie this up in my mind. I was told to ask you it that way.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I work with a lot of single women too,
Yeah.
because a lot of the healing we can do on our own with our own hands, right? In our own space and setting up. I mean, honestly, that's one of the most powerful ways to begin, because once you feel like, okay, I understand how I'm working through this, then you can help somebody else. And so I've worked with
Mm.
single women, I've worked with women who their guys are not spiritual,
Yeah.
you know? And so it's a lot, again, like I said, like, okay, let's have the conversation. Just tell him what you need from him and he
Right.
will show up. And he always does. He
Yeah.
always does. And then the ones who have, spiritual men that are like, okay, at least they have some context of what's
What's
going. So I work with the gamut, and it's possible for anybody, because ultimately, what we're seeking is the intimacy of self, right?
right.
Capital
Yeah.
S. And so we don't have to do it with a partner.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's more powerful to begin the process before,
Mm.
because
Yeah.
let's
Yes.
be real, it throws in another thing, right? Another person with emotions and feelings and sensations and the whole thing.
Yeah. And to have a woman fully embodied in the bedroom, like even the first time that you're together and really connected to herself, that must be a turn on to guys too. Like, or they get fucking scared as fuck because their woman is so powerful, then that's a whole other thing. But I'm sorry, if a woman probably does this work, they're not bringing in a scared as fuck guy into the bedroom. Like, he probably wouldn't have got through the gates unless they're dealing with other things. But like, I think it would be a turn on. Like, that's what I would assume.
Yeah, my man was both
Yeah. Okay.
scared and turned on,
Yeah.
like, Oh my gosh. Every time we would go through these cycles and these, he would be like, he would feel my expansion.
Mm.
And yeah, it would be this like, I'm so drawn, I'm so turned on. And yet, like, question mark, because it's the unknown. What does this mean? What happens when you expand more? What happens? But that pull, that draw in is so
Yeah.
strong that they're willing. They're willing
Like
to
I've never
move towards it.
before, like, and it's like an anomaly energy. It's like the Kundalini awakening. It's like the bliss. It's like actually not living in struggle and chaos and actually having peace in your life. It's all connected that way, but it's not something normal. Well, it's moving through now in the collective where we're choosing this to be, but we're making the choices and doing the work around it because we've got to dismantle all the systems that are in play that have been conditioning us and all the stuff that we go through in this human experience. But I could see some guys, especially if they've been with women who are not opened, or it's just about the sex, or, they've never been intimate, like real intimacy in connection. My twin flame wouldn't look me in the eyes when we would have sex. Like, we were together for 4 years too. And it was just too intense for him when we would look each other into the eyes because he just couldn't hold the energy, and he wasn't prepared to actually honor the connection of all that has been for us. And I look at it now and realize it now. At the time, because I was hiding, it didn't matter that much until like near the end of our relationship, where I was always like, something is missing here. And I couldn't figure out what. Like, we always had good sex, and it was good. Like, it was good. We're just going to put it that way, like, it was good. And there's not like, it wasn't bad. It was good, even though he would probably say it was great. And that's amazing because he would say that, but there was always something there that wasn't fully allowed into the space, that was always like covering. Now, I had my own work to do around all of this, but I felt like I was seeking it from him. Like, look me in the eyes. I want to look at you in the eyes. And then he'd flip me around, and then I'd be, doggy style, so he wouldn't have to address it. Right. And it's interesting to watch it back in, the preview of my movie, and to be like, oh, he really loves doggy style because he doesn't have to connect. And although it's a physically beautiful space to be in because of all the dynamics of the physical body form together that way, but it's like, oh, the intimacy is where the kicker is for sure. So yeah.
Yeah. And, the truth is that guys desperately seek it as well, but it's just not easy for them either. And again, my partner was, it was just about sex. And,
Yeah.
he had to transform a lot.
Mm.
And the truth is that both of us had to really face our egos. The amount of ego slaps I got from my higher self at the beginning of our relationship. Because I was the awake one, right? So it was like, I'm the awake one. And my higher self was like, smack, you drop down to your knees right now because you're being holy high horse, Mrs.
Oh man.
And it was far from, I mean, we went through some extremely, extremely challenging times where we were both really challenged. And, the only thing, we did break up for a month. It was a month we broke up, and it like couldn't sustain itself.
I totally get you. Like, I literally moved countries when we separated because I knew we would keep cycling and we had work to do. And now we're like way too far apart. Like, we just, maybe when we're 80, 90 years old, that'll happen again. But like, we may finish this life together. Most of the time they say that the twin flames finish if they know each other in this life. That's what I've heard. So whether they're together or not throughout the lifetime, but if they've met and connected and understand somewhere along the line, they're going to finish the life together. So I don't know. We'll see. We don't really know. Maybe we'll do a podcast when we're like 90 and 100 and see if that's true. We even have podcasts.
Remember you?
Yeah. But it is a powerful mirror, and it's like, for us to do this work, I didn't realize a lot of the stuff until after I was out of the relationship. And when I started looking back on who I was and my participation, I realized all these things, and I know that we're talking more in connection with the pussy and sex and power and the womb and the healing of that divine energy. But I think this is an important piece too, because it's like honoring that, and sometimes us taking that responsibility back to be like, shit, like this was me, like this was all me, and now I know what I really desire into a relationship, and I'm working on the like, I will never settle. But some of my actions over the last week, like I went onto an online dating site for a week and then I dismantled it all. I just couldn't handle it because I was like, all the guys that are in your inbox right now, you would be settling for. And why are you putting your energy here? You know better than this. And I do, because I'm like, I don't want to lead anyone on either. But if our energies, like, I'm going to know my guy, I'm going to know him. I'm going to be like, that's him. And you've already ingrained in the universal system that you're not meeting a guy online. So why all of a sudden do you think that's going to change? Like, you have to do all the work around it again, like you've done a lot of work of imprinting that one into the field. So like, get off of the app and go live your life juicifully out there, and you're going to find him and he'll be around, and showing up that way. But yeah, anyways, I digress into this conversation, taking us on a tangent in perfect alignment.
Yeah, I always say, with my partner, I always say, like, if we would have met any sooner, we wouldn't have survived the relationship.
Yeah.
I mean, where we are now is tremendous. We are in such a phenomenal place of just so much support and love for each other. I said from the very beginning when we met, like, nothing can really come between us if we just lean in, because we're very, very powerful when we lean in. And we did a lot of leaning out and a lot of like other polar opposite. But now we're at this point of leaning in, and it's just like, it's just such a beautiful relationship. But if I had met him 5 years earlier, I don't think it would have worked so well.
Yeah. And I love that for you. And I love the clarity in which you bring that forward in, because it's something that all of us can really look at and dive into and maneuver through. I feel like the conversation about women almost teaching their guys, like we had taught about, like how to be in this space, may be relevant to some of the people listening. Because I think some of us have been conditioned to think that the guy knows it all, or they're the lead in here. And I'm not talking about BDSM kind of like you be the dominatrix stuff. I'm talking about the desire in you to help them maneuver your body and what this looks like and feels like. And how would you take someone through? Just curious. Obviously, you do a lot of coaching and you do a lot of mentorship in this, and this is like your actual business structure. So I don't want to give all the pieces away. But like, how would you help a woman to really be in the bedroom to ask their men, maybe if they're even alpha males, because some of our mechanism is to be drawn to that kind of man for support and to hold us, that may not be that open to hearing this. How would you maneuver this? I'm just curious.
Yes, that's a really phenomenal question. I'm really glad that you asked it. First and foremost, it's to understand that the truth of it is the men want to support us. They want to give us what we want. They want to make us feel really fucking good. And they want to ultimately serve. That is the core of the masculine.
Right.
And two, they want to know what we need.
Yeah.
Like, that's a known thing, right, ladies? It's a known thing that most guys think they know, don't really know. Is this what she wants? I don't know, because she never tells me.
Right.
Right. And we're not even just talking like sexual techniques here. The first thing I always go with my clients is have the conversations, have the conversations outside of the situation, right? Because you don't want to be in the situation. Now he's triggered, you're triggered, and you're trying to have a conversation about it. Yes, that can happen, but you don't want to start there. Right. Because now egos are triggered. There's defense mechanisms up. Again, it's a very, very vulnerable space.
Yeah.
And first and foremost, the man needs to understand that it's not about him, right? Like, if you say something, it's not a poke on him. It's not against him.
Yeah.
Right. And so sitting down and having those conversations about, what do you need? Do you need to feel safe? Do you need to feel, first lit up? Like, what do you need? And sometimes we have to realize that in ourselves, right? Like, we don't even know what we need.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so if you don't know what you need, I totally get it.
Yeah.
Start with what you don't need.
I need a little bit more time before that comes into me. Yeah.
Yeah. And,
So true.
or even just having the conversation of, hey, I really desire to take our intimacy deeper,
Right.
and I would love to slow it down or pause and have some breaths. Or, hey, sometimes I get really, the more we speak of it in the I form,
Yeah.
right? And like off the men,
Yeah.
like sometimes I feel like really like, oh, I don't know, is that what I want? I'm not really sure, but I need a moment. So can I just say to you, like, oh, let's just pause,
Yeah.
right? And so I teach them how to communicate, how to
Mm.
use
Yeah.
phrases, how to set that up outside of the scene. So then when everybody's triggered, you've already set it up where like, oh, I'm saying this. Oh yeah, okay.
Right.
That means whatever it means. And then they get to start to move through those spaces and through those triggers. And then they go back and communicate more. And every time it just really, really deepens. And honestly, the men are always like, this is so wonderful. At first, they're kind of like, if they're not aware, if they're not conscious, they're like, I don't know, okay, whatever.
Yeah.
But then they're like, oh, I love that so much. I love that you told me. I love that you communicated. I feel like I'm really showing up for you.
Right.
I feel like I'm really showing up for you. And they can see it in their woman, how she changes. And they're like, oh my gosh, it's working, and it like feeds it and validates it. And it all just keeps going further. So communication, communication.
Yeah, and like this is in everything, obviously, in all of the ways we show up in the world, in this aspect, and the communication is the key. So I love that you brought that up. I also feel like inside of this space, women are getting a little bit more curious in this world, like with a lot of the spicy romance novels and erotic fiction novels that are moving through, like, 50 Shades of Grey brought in a different energy into the women collective. And yeah, we could use it as, we're like pulling back off of our guys and be like, oh my God, this is what I'm missing. Or we could use it as fuel to discover parts of us in experiences to move through. Because we only know what we know, right? And just like you said, some women, we don't even know. Like we've been with partners that maybe create consistency in certain things, and we've never tried it in different ways, and we've never experienced it here or there, or in these spaces, or in these rhythms that you bring forth. And I almost feel like I'm in a spicy romance book club. I have been for the year, and it's my genre of go-to until I get like, I'm like, okay, all the books sound the same. I'm going to take a break, and then 6 months will go by, and then maybe I'll pick up another book and move it through. But I could read them in like a day, because it's like I could just, because it's not like they have like a lot of substance in the books, like but if I actually took it as a tool and I brought it into my body and I started to feel like, what would it be like if I was in this scene? And if I was being tied up like this and this man was doing this to me, what would this feel like in my body? And could I imagine this in the real world? And do I desire this in the real world? And I said to my shaman earlier this year, when we started to do some like uprooting, like work and working a lot with Osiris's energy, which I know you probably are familiar with. And Yoni was the first time she got introduced into my world and started to work with her power and energy. I said to her, like, I actually almost desire to be with two men to feel that, to be in that experience, and not in a way of like, some people are like, oh my God, like two guys having sex. I'm like, it's not, no, I want them to be with me. Like I want to be adored in this fashion, because I have never been taken care of this way. Maybe some of the pieces I can reference some, so I'm not taking it all away from the guys I've been with, some degree, okay? But like never in that fashion. And I kept leaning into that to go, what does this feel like for me, and why do I desire this? Am I disconnected in a certain energy field for my own self? And I went into that space, and with some of the shadow work I was doing then too, it all kind of moved together in its unity. But I think that there's like something to this. I'd love to hear your thoughts on anything I just dropped into your field.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think thank you for sharing all that. It was beautiful. And it's always important to understand that, the things that we feel pulled to don't necessarily have any definition
Yeah.
specifically sexually.
Yeah.
And I think that's oftentimes where we get caught up, right? Because we
Mm.
want to think that it somehow defines us in
Yeah.
a particular manner.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you've ever heard of the Book of Ra.
Yeah. Yep.
Ra speaks to this, and they asked about fantasy, and Ra said, there's nothing wrong with fantasy, and there's nothing wrong with making the fantasy a reality,
Right.
as long as, turning into reality doesn't harm anybody.
Yeah.
But even if your fantasy is something a little bit more distorted than that,
Yeah.
there's nothing wrong with that. Like, you can be in that energy, and it's connected to other realities, other lives,
Of
right?
course.
So there's
Yeah.
actually a tremendous amount of healing that we can do through that if we're not judging it, right? Like, why am I having these fantasies, or why am I feeling this ways? And just like let yourself really be there in a loving state.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, like Ross said, is if it's not going to hurt anybody, then absolutely bring it into the physical and experience it physically.
Yeah. Love it. And I've been talking a lot about too some of the mechanisms we're seeing in the world right now is actually that when the veil is so thin with these past lives that we're working within, it's like they're pulling in energies from past lives without the awareness that we have in this energetic capacity and field. So that's why some people are almost confused, almost in an energetic space, and they don't understand that they've maybe chosen certain dynamics of their life right now, and this is the play that they're in at this moment of time, and it's all coming in without any filters on it inside the space. So it's a potent imagery.
Yeah.
The Book of Ra is in my cart in Amazon. Well, in my save for later cart, because I might be able to get it here. It's really hard to get Amazon in Costa Rica. Like, it's a whole other like mechanism. So I'm headed back to Canada next week. So I'm making an Amazon purchase to bring stuff back, and I'm like, okay, that's there. And then a new book called, like, it's not a new book for me, The Flower of Life, something that you might have read. Yeah. Someone
It's a
wants to,
flower of life. Yeah.
yeah, is that
By
what it's
Jen
called?
Blum
And I didn't know if it was like something else that was added at the end of it.
There's 2 volumes. There's the
Yes.
Flower of Life Volume 1, and the Flower of Life Volume 1 is by far the best.
Nice. Yeah. So I look forward.
Yes.
There's a podcast that they want me to read it first before I come on, because just like we went into like the Emerald Tablets and stuff, and I was like, I don't have a reference point. She's like, go read this book and then we can talk. Because I want you to have a reference point to this book. And I'm like, okay, like I'm down for reading more books. So fun. Anyways, random thoughts in Colleen's world. And I love taking this wherever it leads us to. But I want to just lean into, to kind of finish off this episode together, is like, what are you really feeling right now that us as women are maybe needing to feel here? And I use the word needing on purpose at this very moment of time. Like, what's been running through your energy, or what are you feeling really on your heart for all the work that you're doing, and any way you want to bring this forward? I'd love to just hear this.
Yeah, I really feel, and this was coming through as you were talking, as well as, it's about feeling. It's about feeling our body. It's about feeling all of it. And it's about really feeling your pussy like throughout the day. And so one of the most profound ways that we can do that is with our breath, right? Is literally breathing as you're inhaling, breathing all the way down to her. And then, exhaling, you're letting go. And each inhalation, you're breathing all the way down to your labia lips, and your belly is going to go out ever so subtly, your pelvis is going to go out ever so subtly, and then exhaling, the intention is to let go. And when we do this, and what I really love to do is literally cup my hand over her. I do this every single morning. I just cup her, and then I just breathe down into her, because what this does is, for one, connects you to your pussy, right? It connects you to feeling her, like feeling her with your fingers, but also just feeling her in your body, that she's there. Oh yeah, remember, she exists down there.
Yeah,
there she is. And
portal's been ignored.
It's so important, because a lot of time I believe this. A lot of us believe she's just for sex, right? And she's not just for sex. Like, she is here to guide you in your life. Like, all of those neurons in your clitoris is literally to be able to sense energy and sense like, nope, yep, nope, yep, and align you. So our pussy is very much our guidance system. And so we want to connect to her well outside of sex. And so breathing down into her is super powerful to connect to her. And, you can do it 3 breaths and be done with it, right? And you don't even have to cup her. Like, if you're in a weird circumstance, you can't be like cupping your pussy, then by all means, just, take your awareness down to her, breathe down into her, right? 3 breaths. But the other thing is that's where our Shakti lives.
Right.
And Shakti to me is very much like a fire. And when we stoke it with our breath and with our awareness, we stoke the fire. And as we breathe into her and stoke her, we awaken her and she begins her journey. And when we do it just in that fashion, it's very, very gentle. It's not like my experience. And she's highly intelligent. She will move or she won't move and she'll do her thing. You don't have to worry about it. But it's very powerful, just simply 3 breaths down to your pussy every day, at least once a day, if not several.
This is, and like, I sometimes when people have a hard time opening up their heart chakra, I have them put their hand on their heart because it just brings the attention here.
Yes.
So when you cup, and obviously there's a lot of other dimensions to that too, I'm sure, like we could go into that, but one of the reasons is so you know where to breathe into. Because most of us probably haven't thought about dropping it all the way down, you know, into our pussy. Like I can go into the belly easily and I can move that through, but it's like, oh yeah, that's why sometimes I can feel my clit activate. And it gets like a little bit fiery, right? Like I can actually, like when you did this and I brought it in and now my clit's activated, like I could feel my clit. And it's like, it's just, hi, I'm here. And I'm like, are you allowed to be here right now? You know, like, you know,
Yes.
in that energy, but it's that intentional. And I am aware that I can move it there. Like I consciously, I'm pretty aware of my body. So I'm like, oh yeah, that's what she means, you know? And it's like, so cool. Love it.
Yes.
Love
And oftentimes, I don't know about you, but even throughout my life, like, you know, just holding, putting my fingers on her, oftentimes just feels good just to do that outside of what we're speaking about now, right? So there's a comfort level, right? This is why kids do it, right? Because there's a comfort level to touching ourselves there outside of anything sexual, just the comfort.
Yeah.
And so again, just like you said, there's a lot of dimensions and symbolism there.
Yeah. And that's, yeah. So, oh my God, my mind just went somewhere else. I'm going to keep it into this framework here. And I'm just like, I love that you brought that up though, because most of us are our whole life, like as kids, we've been chastised, like hand hits, don't touch yourself there. Cause people reference it in this sexual manner when it's actually just safety and curiosity to our physical forms. So
Innocence.
super interesting. Yeah. Oh my gosh. So you've got multiple ways that people can come and play into your world. Like you have programs and offers and things like that are moving through the field. You also have an amazing podcast that you bring in amazing guests on and stuff. So tell us a little bit about what that might look like in your field today, next week. I don't know, you know, like, what does this look like in the world of us playing together with the pussy and ecstatic women and all that kind of jazz?
Absolutely. Well, so I have an ebook I just created. It's from a workbook that I've had for my program, and I had this delicious hit to like bring it down into a smaller version, and it's really, really delicious. So I highly recommend people to reach out for that because it talks a lot about the things we spoke about today. It really talks about de-armoring ourselves and how we can go about starting that practice of ourself, no partner needed. And then, you know, of course, people can find me on all the social medias, Alara Sage. And I do host a lot of just free healing containers, free ways to connect to me and feel the space and enjoy it. And then, of course, yes, I do have programs and even self-study programs and things that people can engage with deeper.
Yes, I love that. We'll make sure all the links are there and that they can get access to the ebook and they can find you on all the social platforms as well in the show notes. Cause I love your energy. I love the energy we co-create together in this space and on Facebook and all the ways that we're in that space together. And I see you and I feel you and I am grateful. Not the right word, but that's the word coming to me right now. I'm grateful for our connections, deeper rooted than that, I feel. But like, and your energy today was awesome. And I know people are I guarantee you I'm going to get messages from some of the listeners be like, oh my God. And I'll be like, yeah. And I always say to everyone, I'm transparent so much. It's like my personal blog to be on podcasting where I just have unfilteredness because I can, and I want to be unfiltered always. But sometimes, you know, you don't tell all the stories in your Instagram lives, you know, like the podcast people can come to have real connection this way into all of us. So just grateful that you shared in the way that you did and came through in that light. So So good.
Yes, and as always, so delicious to share space with you. And I'm having you on my podcast, so it'll be delicious. And I'm sure some quirky internet stuff will happen then. And I look
I'm gonna
forward to
hardwire
all the
in.
ways.
I'm gonna like hardwire in. I'm gonna be on the helmet and I'm gonna come to like my spaceship. Like I'm gonna be like, I'm ready for
Your
this.
tin hat,
Oh
your
my
aluminum
God.
foil hat.
Yeah, so good. And we'll definitely connect about that. And obviously, I'll make sure to share all of this out into the world when we're together. But I'm just going to encourage everyone, like I always do, if you feel something from this, help us get the word out, share it out, tag us, send Alara a message and tell her about your juicy pussy. I'm sure she'd love to hear about it. So we're just encouraging you guys to like help us spread the word into life. And again, thank you so much for being here and so appreciate your light.
Yay, I'm so honored, my love. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Right is all I had to say to you. I even forgot to record the intro and outro after that episode recording because I was just so much in a vibe. But what a powerful container she held for me to express myself. She held for humanity in general. If you are a woman, you listen to that, you know exactly what I mean. And I'm just so grateful that I get to serve up these conversations into your field and you can gather what you need from them and take it and move within it and be in this alignment within yourself. And I am just, I love this work. I love this vibration. I love the connection within the people that are stepping in to speak into the truth of all these certain dynamics in the world. And this was no other way that we can move through this, right? And I love it. So, guys, if you are feeling these, tag Alara and I in all your posts and social media, send it to a friend, help us get some traction on this, because the more people that get this in their hands, the more people get this light into their hands. And we can't do this without you. And I say this every single time. Give us a review, help us spread the word. If you heard this and you're like, oh my God, that episode was amazing, help us out. The more reviews we get, the more podcasts the more people see the podcast, the more eyes get on it, the more it's suggested to other people. The more you tag us on social media, the more other people get to see this dynamic so that they can go find the podcast too. So I'm just so grateful. I'm grateful for all the people in my life. I'm grateful for all the guests coming on. I'm grateful for all the conversations I get to be a part of. And I'm grateful for the container that you guys support within. And I will see you guys all in the next episode.